Bucket Podcast with your hosts, Krystle Matar and Michael R Fletcher. Now sit back and prepare to be entertained.
Greetings and welcome back to the Dripping Bucket Podcast. Today we are joined by Thomas Howard Riley, author of The Glass Eye Chronicles, We Break Immortals, and the most recent release, The Light of Kasaban. And hopefully I haven't fucked up the pronunciation of anything too much.
I mean,
Thomas, thank you for joining
that's
us.
fantasy. Yeah.
How you doing, man?
Doing pretty good. How are you guys doing?
Fucking
we're
awful.
doing. I was gonna say we're doing better than Thomas.
Yep. A little technical difficulty trying to get in. But yeah, so I'm doing pretty good. I'm just thrilled to be here, man.
Yeah,
I'm excited to be talking to you guys. Yeah, it's been a while since I've done a video chat or an interview or anything, and I'm really glad this is my first one back in a while.
Super high pressure. This has got to be like really slick.
I'm
unacceptable.
I'm very nervous. Well, I don't want to disappoint Fletcher here. Okay.
Well, first, we're going to start off by critiquing your clothing choices.
I was going to say it is not exactly a high bar.
Is it too much? Did I button it too high? Not high enough? I don't know.
I seem to remember the last time I was on anything with you, Thomas. That was when we were with Fantasy Files podcast. And if I remember correctly, some of us were drinking,
you're right.
And you
yes,
were
that
not.
was the drunk the drunk podcast. Yes,
but you were not drinking because I think
I was
you were
the
still,
only one. Yeah,
you were still battling health issues.
I'm not used to being the straight man in the comedy situation because I'm usually the joker. I'm usually the one who's. So it was a weird experience for me, but it was a lot of fun.
Yeah, that was a good one. I'm pretty sure that was the one with Ryan and Holly.
Yes, Ryan and Holly. I can't think of two people I would rather be on a drunk podcast with than
just not me. Fuck me though.
Well, definitely you. You're a given.
Yeah, sure. Okay, so we had you on because you like write books and shit. And
that's the rumor.
While we were waiting for you, we were stalking your Goodreads, and you published as far back as what was it, Fletcher?
2013, right? Was your
yes, yeah, my original
OG self-publisher.
My original proto versions. Hopefully the covers aren't there because
they are. Sorry to tell you, they are.
No, yeah, those are like some. Those were my first like foray into indie publishing and just kind of. Had no idea what I was doing. Very, unedited. It was from, I did not have as critical of an eye for editing back then as I do now. So
if it's any consolation, when we had Ben on, he was talking about publishing at about the same time, and he admitted the same thing that
I pulled those books. Yeah, I pulled those. They're a crime best left unsolved. Honestly, so technically at this point, I still consider We Break Immortals to be my debut.
Oh, I see.
Can you even see my two clips?
Yeah.
I was doing the figures, so I still consider that to be my official debut because those were very primitive versions of books at the time. Even at the time, like I feel like I've come a long way in just a few years since We Break Immortals came out because I go back and read. I still surprise myself with how good some of those chapters are, but I also make myself cringe a number of times, like just the way I structured paragraphs and things. Like already I'm like, oh God, why did I do that? I should have. So I've already come a long way since then. So you can imagine how I feel about those ones from 2013.
Oh yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. Like once you start editing, like really taking editing seriously and getting the, on a craft level, getting that stuff sharp, that seems to be the fastest way to evolve. as a writer.
It's honestly like I have an editor in my head arguing with me now. Which, like, I've had enough critical feedback from, you know, beta readers, other authors, you know, actual readers of the books, and you know, editors, editing professionals, that now it's sort of like those are the kind of thoughts that I kind of prime myself with when I'm actually doing the writing or the, you know, the revision process now. So it's I still have to get beta reader feedback. I still have to get editing, but it's a lot less of it now.
You can kind of start to see around those corners, and like as you're working on it, you're going to be like, oh, the beta readers are going to say this is too weak, or this is too much.
And like the one of my current work in progress, which will probably be the next release I have, most likely, unless a novella, you know, falls out of my pocket between now and next year.
If you have any extra.
And it's probably my favorite thing that I've written so far. But the beta reader feedback from that actually, I felt like, significantly improved the story. Like it didn't, like, the best kind of editing or beta reading type feedback is when they tell you, they show you where opportunities are, so that you can then see them yourself, and then you can figure out how to take steps to make that right. And that really happened on this book. So, but anyway, the point I was trying to get to before I got sidetracked by myself, was that since I got that feedback, because I'm also working on the sequel to We Break Immortals, which has been a long time coming, it's a big book, though, for many reasons, which we can get into later if you want. I don't know. But now that I just got this one book back from my editor, but I'm also still, you know, fiddling around with the sequel to We Break Immortals before it goes to an editor. And while I'm waiting for beta reader feedback, I'm already kind of like revising it based on things that were said. So like, I feel like every book that I go through makes me better, you know, as a writer. So I appreciate that.
Are you from the school of like lots of beta readers, you know, as much feedback as possible, or like a hand-picked couple who are actually like good
at this point, I have a hand-picked couple who I trust, who look at stories kind of from different angles, so that I'm not getting all of the same kind of like feedback from multiple people. I'm getting like people are pointing out different things that the other might not see. I was actually just talking about this, maybe it was on Twitter just the other day, that I wish I had that when I did We Break Immortals, honestly, because I feel like a lot of the things that I go about with that book were because at that time I did have a lot of beta readers, and I didn't know I needed to be picky with them. Like I just had a lot of them, and not just that. I thought that I was supposed to weigh all of their feedback evenly. When some of the feedback may not have been, you know, what was right for the book. But I was trying to, like, you know, make the changes to like make everybody happy, basically. And I feel like that did lead me to a couple of tricky things with it. But yeah, now at this point, I have a couple of trusted people. I have about four currently. There's a fifth person who's like in rotation, who when they're available, they will do it. But
pitch hitter.
But they're invaluable to me. Like I couldn't praise them any higher for the, you know, the work that they do to do that, you know, for the love of the genre, the love of reading, and the desire to help make my books better. Like they're just incredible. So.
Well, then second, can we have their contact info so we can poach them from you?
Yes. Well, I think you guys probably know them all, at least 2 or 3 of them already. So this is not a beer. This is not a beer. This is not a drunk podcast.
I mean, you earned it because you didn't get to drink on the last one, and also with the technical difficulties you were having.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm choosing to believe that that's a beer, not an energy drink.
That's okay.
So something that came up like before we decided to start recording was like, man, bro, like I so admire your tenacity and your resilience because you have been through some shit since the launch of We Break Immortals. Like I was trying to tell Fletcher about it while we were waiting for you, but I couldn't remember exactly the details. But if
day of my launch of We Break Immortals, like, was the
sick.
first. First of all, I got sick.
Yeah.
And was then sick for like 3 months. But
yeah,
Amazon ebook cloud services went down globally.
Oh, that was
for
the day.
Like
oh,
the entire business day of the United States and Canada.
Oh my god.
So on, and so I'm so happy that I got I did get a significant number of sales for me. But I was like, oh man, if only the store had been open on my actual launch day, it would be like that. So and since then, pretty much all of my releases have had some kind of little thing go wonky. This year, my physical arcs of the Light of Kasaban did not arrive until about a week after my launch. So instead of advanced review copies for people to get reviews in, they ended up being late review copies. So I'm trying to make the best of it, of all the things that happen. And I've just kind of accepted that my launches are probably going to go haywire in one way or another.
Something happened for the monsters we feed too. And I don't even remember what it was.
I can't remember. There was something wrong with that one too. And also I got sick for that one as well.
Yeah.
And not just sick, but like sick for months. Like I had an ongoing like health. One of the reasons that the sequel to We Break Immortals has been so long in coming was because right after the release of it, I got incredibly ill. And where in fear for your life to a certain degree, kind of
we were
illness
worried about you.
And ongoing. And so I had to like kind of like sideline working. Oh, we have a visitor, by the way.
Oh, a cat or a baby?
Penelope.
A cat. Queen Penelope.
She doesn't like me talking to strangers on the phone.
So she's like, "Excuse me, sir. I am the one that gets all your attention." Yeah.
Where was I? Oh, yes. So I had to kind of like, because the sequel was a chunky monster, and it was a lot to struggle with.
Yeah.
It still is, yeah. But it was a lot to struggle with where I was health wise, like because I still had to deal with work, still had to deal with the my kid. At that time, it was just one kid. Now it's
just
two.
One.
And he was a handful. But that kind of led me to write the monsters we feed. So in a certain extent, there's kind of a silver lining to it, is that I still had to write. I felt compelled to write, because if I don't write for a while, like I'm
something starts itching in.
I get I have to write constantly, so or I get itchy about it. So I wanted to write like a smaller scale story so that I could still satisfy that need, but without getting all stress and whatnot about it. And the monsters we feed came out of that. And I think I wrote that whole book in like a month.
Yeah.
And then I did one round of revisions where I added some major structural elements and a main character. And then that was it.
Because it's not possible for Thomas to hit a word count limit.
Correct. Oh yeah, no. It at the time, famously, that's my not a novella. That was my not a novella, because I was like, I'm gonna write a novella, guys. Get ready.
What?
And then I'm like, and then by a couple of weeks in, I'm like, what's the max limit for a novella again? And then and then a couple of weeks later, I'm like, is 90,000 words too long to be a novella, guys? Okay, well, at least I'll be able to keep it under 100. Nope, I did not keep it under 100.
Your novella is longer than most of my novels.
Yeah. So, but I really do love that book. It's a totally different style of story, because it's a very intimate a character study of these characters in a much smaller scale situation. Like they're just small scale people living a small scale life.
Does it slots into the world though? Like it's the
Oh,
same.
oh yeah, no,
Yeah, okay.
It does fit in. It's just not like a direct type of connection. There are revelations in it that have profound implications for characters from We Break Immortals, for instance. I try to do that with all my books. I kind of I want to do kind of the Stephen King approach, where everybody is in kind of the same world, and you know, character from books that are not part of any kind of series will still reference the same made up cities, the same made up characters, and reference each other's events and things like that. So I definitely do want to do that, but it's definitely not an epic type story. It's more of like a, you know, like a medieval noir kind of thriller story.
Oh,
do you
man,
see what I
really
have to work with here?
She's really jealous. That's great.
This is Penelope.
And that's why she's known as the queen of the Riley household.
She is the queen. Yeah, she is the boss of the house. She bosses around all the other much larger cats. Oh,
and you?
Peanut, what are you doing? Come on, hop down. Come over here. There you go. Keep going.
Oh, man.
Sorry, guys.
Cats are always welcome.
She is my best friend cat. She's my once in a lifetime pet. The one that like is like just imprinted to you and is just like your familiar. You know, she's my animal companion for sure. Like, so
that's how we learned that Thomas is a witch.
Yes, correct. She is my familiar. But yeah, so she'll if I start talking too loud, she'll come in and like put a paw on me to like tell me to calm down. Like it's yeah. It's very cute. So
no passion allowed, only for Penelope. Yeah.
Yeah, but for The Monsters We Feed is a separate story, which, but I mean, it's not the way to go about your writing career, guys. By the way, if you write an epic fantasy, like hardcore fantasy type chonky book, don't immediately come out with a book that's a totally different genre story.
I gotta say though, if it was that or nothing, I feel like you did make the right choice. You know, for your own sanity, but also like there's nothing wrong with jumping around. I think that is the
it's in my nature to jump from thing to thing, and another thing, a blessing / problem that I had while I was ill, because I had this successive issue of illnesses over the past, like pretty much the past 3 years, where significant portions of the year I was just down for the count in many ways. And only now I get to do it with 2 kids, so it's even more exciting.
You're doing great.
But one of the other things that I did was in my spare time, I would like sit down and like think up other story ideas. And other plot, and some of these stories I've outlined, some of them I already have, you know, cover ideas for. I'm always in search of the elusive novella, so it's always I'm on this quest. So I currently have 2 other ideas that I'm going to try next to try to find the holy grail, the holy novella. I'm Percival right now. I'm trying to find it.
You're a true jack of all trades as far as like novel length goes, because Monsters We Feed is what? It's several 100,000. It was longer than Brightwash.
Yes. We Break Immortals was just over 300,000.
Okay.
And
Monsters We Feed
is I think 109,000, and then Light of Kasaban is 66,000.
66. Okay. Yeah. Well, I see why you say it.
And then the next book I have coming is going to be about 260,000.
And that one's not yet the sequel. That's
correct. Yeah, that's funny thing. It is, but it isn't, because
yes, this is the one that you took out.
I famously early on, back when I was writing my proto stories, I thought that I just had to have everything in one big series. And so all the story ideas I had, I would try to tie together. They may still tie together eventually, Like I may do an Avengers style team up of characters, who knows? But at the time, I just had all these different storylines in the same big book. And so the original sequel to We Break Immortals was like 680,000 words of just jam packed with all these different stories. So one of the things I cut out of it was
2 full characters, right?
Well, technically 3. Well, 2.5, because I think Saya, the character from this, still looks likely to appear in the sequel. I just need a new intro for her because her intro
is now in another book.
This was originally just 3 chapters of an intro to her character, and it ended up blowing up to being this whole book. And then the same thing happened with the other 2 characters, because there were the 2 other characters that were in there that were kind of like in their own separate story, that weren't going to come along for a while. And so I was like, okay, I'll cut them out too. I'll put them in their own book and see how things go. And so that took about, another, 90, 100K words out of it. But then that 90K words ended up blowing up to 260K because I'm me and that I just can't. So that book is good. Technically, those were originally going to be characters from the sequel as well, but now they're their own book and possibly their own series because I have a lot of ideas for them now as well.
I only laugh because I can relate so well, because like, man, I don't know how people like Fletcher do it with these little short books on an idea.
100,000 words is like perfect. 100 to 110. I'm like, boom.
I'm bound and determined to get a novella. Okay.
As soon as I see 80,000 words, I'm like, okay, at this point,
that's it.
Time to wrap up.
That's all you get. Yeah.
It's time to start wrapping shit up.
I think that's why I'll probably never succeed, because it takes me at least that long to figure out like what the fuck I'm even writing about, and then I have to go and clean it up and then like carry the rest of the book forward. It's just
a lot of my problem is with my misunderstanding of how long it takes to develop characters and scenes, because I used to outline books and be like, oh yeah, I can fit all this stuff in one book, no problem. This will just be one chapter. And then it's like, oh no, you have to have like 6 different scenes setting up this, and then you have to have this emotional scene over here in order to make this payoff, earn this payoff over here. And these characters can't go to this one city, introduce the city, meet a bunch of new characters, solve a riddle, have an emotional argument, do all this stuff. You can't do all that in just one chapter. Or, so my outlining has become more realistic now.
Interesting.
I'm more optimistic that I'll be able to, if not hit an actual novella, that I'll be able to like keep some of these stories to smaller stories. Because I've learned that when I used to outline for this many things, thinking it would fit here, it actually fit here. So now when I go to outline things now, I'll say, okay, this many things is probably going to take this much space. So, and then I work things out accordingly to that.
How detailed are your outlines? Are you like
good question.
One of those crazy planners where like everything that's going on, or
it's kind of a weird process I have. It's kind of like a helix, constantly spinning of plotting and pantsing. Because I'll sit down and I'll think of like, okay, what story do I want to tell? Okay, this sounds like an interesting idea. Okay, let's and I'll think of some aspects of it and see if it gels into a story, and then I'll kind of like make like a breakdown of like chapters. Like I call them like chapters. Okay, what do I want to do in this chapter? And I'll be like, okay, this will introduce this, and then this will develop this, and then this will introduce this thing, and then here's the conflict that happens, and that sets everything going crazy, and then this happens, and then here, and I'll have, I'll go through the whole story like that, and then while I'm like, sometimes I'll take a break from that to just like, write out character names and like just think of character names and fun stuff. And then I have this weird thing where like the way a character's name sounds like affects how I think of their personality. And I don't know if that's a thing that people do, or if that's just because.
No, that's. I mean, if it's just your insanity, I have the same insanity, so it's okay. I feel that way.
I have synesthesia, and so I wonder if maybe that
Oh.
has something to do with it. Like if I'm getting an impression from that, or if this is just something completely different than that. But that sometimes leads me to go back in and change the plot to be like, okay, maybe this character isn't going to be this good sidekick. Maybe they have an ulterior motive. Okay, let's explore that. Let's do that. And then as I start writing the story, the outline may completely change. And my outlines, like a lot of the detail that I do is just character names and figuring out places and kind of like a general idea. Because a lot of my outlines are like, okay, this chapter takes place in this place. These two characters are going to talk. They're going to argue about something. Then this happens, and then so yeah, I have outlines, but they're to a certain extent pretty vague. Like I know where the story is mostly going, but I may not know all the steps along the way. But I have I just kind of like to set myself that framework. Because obviously, if I don't, I will go completely off the rails, and I'll end up with a 400,000 word prologue to a 10 million page book. So I have to stop myself. So, and it's weird for me because We Break Immortals was 17 versions. Like there were whole different, there were revision, like earlier versions of the story. There had like a cosmic horror version. There was a traditional high fantasy version, with completely different things happening, different characters. One of the POV characters in that book was not introduced until the 17th draft. And so it's weird to compare that to The Monsters We Feed, which I wrote almost all the way through in just one shot, based on my thought of what I want to do and kind of the outline. However, I did end up coming back and adding a whole nother main character and plot line in revision and whatnot. But
just to kind of.
But it was just one revision. Yeah, like I was able to determine what was missing or what I needed to do more quickly with that book. But so the We Break Immortals experience was. Yeah.
I do think that is common though, at least on a first book, where you're throwing a bunch of spaghetti at the wall and kind of trying to figure out like, who even am I as a writer? I don't know.
There were point of view characters that I really loved their storylines or their angles that I ended up cutting out of that book completely. Scenes that I really liked that I left by the wayside. Maybe some of those things will influence other books in the future. We'll see. But yeah, it was tough editing that one. And the sequel has been pretty tough as well. From the angle of I wanted to match it to, like, because my original draft of it was based on a previous draft of We Break Immortals. And so I wanted the process of updating it to be in line with what I wanted and kind of discovering what I wanted to do with the series along the way. Because my opinions on that have changed over time. Like originally, I was very gung-ho about doing it one certain way, and this is the way I'm going to do it, and I'm going to tell the story this way in this many books. And that's kind of modified a little bit in my mind over time. So
I went through
my life is an outline. I keep changing it.
Yeah. Well, I went through, if it's any consolation, I went through the same thing with Brick and Bone, where I had a lot of that story planned and finished before Brightwash was finalized, and then and then I left it, and then I went back to Brightwash and I changed a bunch of stuff. And then I published it, so then it was permanent and I couldn't change it anymore. And then I went back to Brick and Bone and went, well, fuck, I don't, none of this work. And I struggled with it for a long time, trying to figure out like what genre it even needed to be now in the wake of. And so all of that is to say that you will survive it. I believe in you. I was
following, like, it was funny because as you were talking about that journey of how Brigand One was going, I was like, there's so many parallels between between that and my sequel. I'm at the point where I'm like ready for this book to be done as well, because I feel like this has been the demon on my back for like 3 years, and I feel like I can finally
so
breathe and be relaxed and move on to other stuff. Yeah. So, but so it's definitely like that, Krystle, definitely, because that's exactly how I felt about it too. So try not to write your second book all the way through before your first book is finished.
Yeah, that is I co-sign that advice, because buckets
completely insane.
Yeah,
I
I created so many problems for myself by doing that. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, my original impetus for writing that series was that, like, I thought everything had to be an epic, endless series type thing, because that's that's what I saw when I went. Those are the books that I read, and so that it's kind of been a process of like pulling myself back from that mindset. A little too late, obviously, but now I have I feel like I have a more reasonable approach to new books and new series, where I can keep them focused, keep them in the right direction, and not overdo it. Like, a lot of me fixing my sequel was like pulling out all the stuff that I overdid, that I recognized from when I revised We Break Immortals. And there's still stuff I wish I could have pulled back out of there, because you don't have to set up everything. You don't have to set up book 7 in book 1. I mean, I do technically have like a thing where if somebody eventually goes back and reads it, there is a one conversation in We Break Immortals that might foreshadow something, but I was putting in all kinds of details of things, and this culture that they're going to visit maybe in book 3, and now I'm like, none of that. No, we're going to be very focused, a little bit of that for like flavor, to make the world feel lived in and things like that. But I'm going to stop trying to like have characters do 10-page monologues of lore and
to set up 7 books from now. That might not even happen the way that you're imagining them.
It's so funny because even my characters who legendarily don't do what I tell them to do, even my characters at one point, my characters were revolting against me because I had this part where there was a lore dump, and then one of the I was kind of I like to get in the character's head of whose POV. I do third person, but I like to like focus on their way of thinking while I'm writing or revising. And so I'm writing it, and I'm just thinking in the mindset of that character, and I'm writing, and he's like, "Geez, this is boring. Geez, like this stupid wizard is just droning on. God, I wish I could get out of here. I hate that." And I was like, man, maybe I should cut this from the book. You know what? You're right. Yeah. Let's get this out of here, guys. So when even your characters are telling you, that's a sign. It's a sign. So
I remember that. That happened to me. I don't know. I think once on Brick and Bone, where like Bosker or somebody said like, "You've lost the plot." I'm like, "Yeah, man, I really have."
No shit. And on that note, we're at a half an hour. Let's we're gonna
did I monopolize all the time, you guys? I'm so sorry.
It's all good.
No, it's good.
Once I get going,
we're gonna wrap up this episode and possibly do another with Thomas if he is willing to hang out with us a bit.
If he is willing,
certainly.
Join us next week when we discuss something else.
Thomas's face.
I just shaved an hour ago. This is what happens when you're a dad. Is this immediately?
Yeah. All right. Thanks for joining us, man.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, and we'll be back.